I still remember the gentle hum of summer evenings when every whispered promise shimmered like fireflies in the dusk. Brandon, vibrant at 28 and drawn into my orbit 4 years ago through a mundane workday spark, became the center of my universe. For 3 years we savored a delicate courtship before sealing our fates in a marriage that, though dazzling in its promises, hid cracks in its foundation. At 30, I believed our future was written in golden light, yet even then an unspoken disquiet lurked in the spaces between our shared smiles. There was one shadow that I could never quite ignore, Brandon's lifelong friend, Fu, a man whose laughter thundered and whose presence intruded like an uninvited guest at a quiet picnic. Their bond, forged in the reckless days of middle school, was celebrated by everyone as a near brotherhood. But to me, Fu's boisterous antics and his persistent need to be near Brandon felt like a cold draft slipping under a door. When I timidly voiced my discomfort, Brandon's dismissive chuckle, arguing that a man's friendship couldn't evoke jealousy, only deepened the chill in my heart. Was it truly so simple, or was my soul silently screaming for recognition? In a desperate bid to recapture the intimacy we once shared, I designed a dream escape, a 4-day voyage to a paradise of sapphire waters and powdery beaches. Every detail was planned with painstaking care, sunrises to set our worries alight with hope, and sunsets that would bathe us in a palette of burning amber and rose. This wasn't merely a vacation, it was my attempt to reclaim the remnants of a love slipping away. I invested every ounce of my savings into this getaway, hoping that amid the tropical breezes our hearts might rediscover their lost cadence. 10 days before departure, I unveiled my secret plan to Brandon. His eyes sparkled with excitement, as if we were about to step into a wonderland crafted just for us, a sanctuary away from the weight of our daily burdens. Yet destiny, as it often does, twisted that promise into a cruel farce. Just 2 days into what should have been a soul-renewing retreat, an unwelcome specter reappeared. Out of the cerulean horizon stepped Fu, his sudden arrival as jarring as a rogue wave against a fragile sandcastle. Brandon casually recounted our plans to him, and then, with an ease that defied the gravity of his words, Fu declared that I should remain behind. His demand, as absurd as it was heartless, was designed to resurrect the good old days of their camaraderie, leaving me marooned in a moment of betrayal while he and Brandon sailed off into a future without me. I stood there, rooted in disbelief, feeling the warmth of our planned escape evaporate like dew in the noonday sun. Where was the partner who once vowed to cherish our shared dreams? Instead, I was left to witness as the tide of loyalty shifted irrevocably away from me. In the aftermath of that fateful day, when the echo of Fu's parting footsteps still reverberated in the empty corridors of my heart, I sought answers. I confronted Brandon with trembling resolve, my words laden with both sorrow and indignation. Yet his response was nothing more than a dismissive laugh, a stark reminder that my pain was, in his eyes, an overblown reaction to a simple act of friendship. He argued that Fu's recent heartbreak had left him desperate for solace, and even suggested that my objections were misplaced since a man's bond should never be questioned. When I reminded him that every detail of that cherished getaway had been paid for by my own hard-won savings, his only reply was a feeble promise to repay me later, a promise as empty as a conch shell echoing in a vast, indifferent sea. That night, I retreated to the guest room, feigning the onset of a cold to hide the true chill that had gripped my soul. In the stillness of that lonely space, the truth became unbearably clear. I was adrift in a marriage where my voice was muted, and my love was eclipsed by an unyielding bond that I could never share. I began to see our home, a sanctuary I had nurtured for 7 long years, as a prison built on broken dreams. With a heavy heart and a mind steeled by anguish, I resolved that I would no longer allow myself to be a silent bystander in the unraveling of my own life. In a decisive act of reclaiming what was once mine, I reached out to a trusted legal confidant and set into motion a plan that had long been fermenting in the shadows of my despair. I arranged for the purchase of the house, a home that had been solely in my name for years, and prepared divorce papers with meticulous care. Every stroke of the pen was a defiant act against the life I no longer wished to live. When Brandon returned from that ill-fated vacation, I met him at our doorstep, clutching a neatly stacked folder of legal documents. With eyes once so full of tender promises now hollow with regret, he received my ultimatum, an hour to gather his belongings and leave the life we had built together. His reaction was a discordant symphony of disbelief and panic. At first, he laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that mocked the gravity of the moment, before the reality of my resolve forced him into a stuttering silence. Our ensuing argument was a torrent of raw emotion. My voice trembled with the anguish of years spent in silence, while his retorts, dismissive and cold, revealed a man unwilling to shoulder the consequences of his choices. Every word felt like a chisel striking away at the fragile veneer of our past, until nothing remained but the stark truth: I was worth more than a life subordinated to the whims of a friendship that had always come first. Update 1, Reflections in the Aftermath. I wish to extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone who reached out, those whose gentle words and unvarnished truths have helped me piece together a shattered self. In the quiet aftermath, I've come to realize that my years with Brandon were nothing more than a losing battle, a contest where I was forever pitted against a bond one could never sever. Every day now, I ask myself, was I doomed to be the perpetual understudy in a drama that celebrated someone else's role over mine? Even the prospect of a family, the idea of nurturing life together, now seems tainted by the bitter reminder that his misplaced affections would always lie with Fu. I stand here today, forced to confront the painful reality that I was never his priority, and perhaps, in that cruel equation, I must learn to value my own worth above all else. Update 2, The Revelation of Further Betrayal. Just when I thought the betrayal had reached its nadir, fate delivered another crushing blow. In the midst of the chaos, subtle messages began to appear on my phone, sterile good morning texts from Brandon, so routine they might have been forgotten if not for their timing. Then, on the 4th day of our crumbling vacation, a message arrived at 3 a.m., a desperate murmur of affection that should have bridged the gap between us but instead deepened the void. I dismissed it at first, unwilling to let a flicker of hope undo the reality of what had transpired. But then, an unexpected messenger appeared on social media, a stranger whose own vacation tale was laced with the bitter tang of deceit. This woman, with remorse in her words and vivid recollections of that ill-fated hotel bar, told me that Brandon had confided his true name to her and had seduced her in a moment of careless abandon. She described how, enticed by his charm and the absence of any visible promise, no ring, no sign of commitment, she had succumbed to the allure of a man who was never truly free. Her account was as detailed as it was damning, painting a picture of a clandestine affair that was not merely a byproduct of Fu's interference but a calculated betrayal of our marriage. I couldn't help but wonder if this debacle was not an isolated incident, if perhaps this was part of a recurring nocturnal ritual between him and Fu, a secret dance of flirtations and escapades that had long been their hidden refrain. Update 3, The Final Plea. In the days that followed, the remnants of our past clung desperately to the present. Brandon's attempts to mend the shattered pieces of our union came in a deluge of late-night phone calls and urgent messages, pleas for forgiveness, admissions of a momentary lapse, and offers of marriage counseling as if a few sessions could erase years of betrayal. His words, drenched in a feigned remorse, fell upon ears that had grown deaf to empty promises. I felt each apology like a cold slap, a reminder that the man who once embraced me with tenderness now wielded regret as a feeble salve for his own transgressions. In a final, resolute act of self-preservation, I cut off all channels of communication, blocking him on every platform so that his desperate voice would no longer echo through the corridors of my recovery. Update 4, The Dawn of a New Beginning. At long last, the inevitable legal reckoning has begun. Brandon has now responded to the divorce petition, not with a fight to save a crumbling marriage, but with the audacity to negotiate the terms of his exit. Even more galling is his demand for alimony, a plea for financial support after all the betrayals and broken promises. It is as if he believes that, despite his infidelities, he still commands a share of the life I built with my own hands. Adding insult to injury, his desperation led him to contact my parents in a vain attempt to track me down, as if my refuge and solitude could be penetrated by his relentless persistence. But I have already fortified my sanctuary, new locks adorn my doors, and heightened security ensures that no unwanted shadow can cross my threshold again. Amidst these final legal entanglements, I find solace in the knowledge that our divorce mediation is set to begin in just 3 days, a final chapter that promises to sever the last remnants of a union marred by betrayal. I am also grateful that our future did not come with the added weight of a child, a complication that might have only deepened the tragedy of a life lived in half-light. With the support of friends and family, who always warned me of the subtle dangers in Brandon's misplaced loyalties, I now step into the light of a new dawn. My heart, once fractured by years of silent suffering, is slowly healing, and I embrace the possibility of rediscovering my own worth beyond the confines of a love that was never truly mine. Now, as I stand on the precipice of a reborn life, I share my story not as a lament for what was lost, but as a declaration of my hard-won freedom. To anyone who has ever felt cast aside or diminished by the choices of those they loved, know that your worth is not measured by someone else's inability to prioritize you. The journey from betrayal to liberation is fraught with pain and bitter truths, but it is also a path toward reclaiming the vibrant light within you. Thank you for walking this tumultuous road with me. Every word of support, every unvarnished truth shared, has been a stepping stone toward the life I am now determined to build, a life where I am, at last, the unwavering priority of my own heart.